Good morning and welcome to our notes for today. We're on lesson 2.6. We're on page 12 in our yellow book. And today we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equations using the drum roll, please. The quadratic formula. Wow. I bet you couldn't have guessed that. So, we're using the quadratic formula today, and I just want you to know that if you've been struggling with the last few lessons, whether it's factoring or completing the square, I don't want you to worry because today's lesson has nothing to do with those skills, okay? Today's lesson is kind of a standalone. So I'm going to take you from 0, as they say, to 100. Okay? Like that. So, don't be scared of today's lesson. It's going to be great. There are a lot of little steps that we're going to have to be very careful about, so watch your algebra, okay? The biggest mistakes are like adding and subtracting here. Seriously, you guys, this is not difficult at all. Just stick with me and we'll get through it. So, let's start in our notes on page 12. On the left side, so I want you to draw kind of like a line halfway through your notes. Now on the left side, let's label that quadratic formula. And I'm going to introduce it to you straight off the bat, okay? Here it is. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root. Copy it down so it's a negative in front of our b. Then plus or minus a big square root, because a lot of stuff is going to go inside the square root, okay? B squared minus 4 times a times c. All of that goes under your square root, so make sure that the shelter being provided covers everybody. And now we're not done. Now we're not going to just focus on the first piece, we're not just going to focus on the second piece, but all of this, okay, everything after this equal sign. All that stuff to the right of the equal sign is going to be divided by 2 times a. Just like that. And that, my friends, is going to be our quadratic formula. It's pretty dope. It looks very cool as a formula. I don't know about you, but if I were a student and I learned this quadratic formula today, I would go home and show my parents and be like, look what I learned at school. This is a dope formula. Okay, so we're going to now... It looks like a lot, I know. But we're going to break it down. Where the heck are all these letters coming from and what do they mean? So, put this in a box and let's jump into the y. So our first example. If I said, here's an equation, x squared minus 3x plus, 5. Equals 0. And I said, hey, solve this equation, solve for x. Well, a couple things you might do are these. First step, you would check if there's a greatest common factor that you can pull out. So you'd look at all the numbers in front. Okay, since there's nothing that goes evenly into 1, 3, and 5, GCF doesn't work. Next step, you might check difference of squares, or, and that's for if there's just 2 terms, right? A squared minus b squared. But if there's 3 terms like here, you won't want to use difference of squares. You're going to use factor by grouping. And so you might try that. So, well, let's give it a shot. Factor by grouping, you might, so you don't have to write this stuff down, by the way. I'm just showing you the thinking process as a review. Okay, so you might say, hey, I need 2 numbers that multiply to a times c. That's 1 times 5, okay, that multiply to 5, but that add up to our middle number. They've got to add to negative 3. Now, I want you to actually think about it. What numbers could work? Well, the only numbers that multiply to 5 are 1 and 5, and no matter which way you spin it, these guys are never going to add up to 3, let alone a negative 3. So this is not factorable. Like, I can't solve this by factoring. It's just impossible. And so if you've tried GCF, if you've tried difference of squares, and you've tried factoring by grouping, well, there's still one more way to solve for x, and that is called the quadratic formula. So let's see how we might go about using the quadratic formula on this example. Well, look at these letters here. It says A, B, C. Right? We're using A, B, and C in our formula. Those aren't coming from nowhere. They're coming from our equation. Our A is going to be the first coefficient here. Our B is going to be the second coefficient. And our C is going to be the final coefficient. So have a look. If I think of this in terms of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then my a would be our positive 1 because it's the guy in front of my x squared. My b would be negative 3. It's the guy in front of my x, right? So negative 3 is in front of my x. And then my c is the number all by himself at the end. So here my c would be positive 5. Those are the numbers that we would then plug in to our quadratic formula above. Okay, put a box around this guy. That's where we're getting our A, B, and C from. Let's do one more quick example. If you have room, write it down. If you don't, watch along, but I want you to absorb, okay? So our next example is going to say 2x squared minus x minus, let's say 7 equal to 0. All I want you to do is find A, B, and C so we can start plugging into our formula. So we know A is going to be the guy in front of our x squared term. This would be called our leading coefficient. The coefficient that's in the front. A is 2. Okay, try the rest yourself. Try it. Be careful. Watch your signs. My B is going to be, I hope you wrote it in there. That's a negative 1. Good job if you got it. And my C finally would be negative 7. Okay, because the sign matters, so keep the sign. If you've got that down, honestly, that's probably where a lot of mistakes are made, is right here, just identifying A, B, C. So if you've got that down, you're good to go, we're on the right track. Let's jump into our first actual problem. Example 1a says, solve this guy, m squared minus 5m minus 14 equals 0. So let's jump right in. Let's find our A, our B, and our C. So A is the number in front of our first term. By the way, if you don't like these m's, you can rewrite them as x's. It doesn't matter. If it makes you more comfortable, go ahead and do that. But it's the same thing, right? The number in front of my m squared or my x squared is a 1. My B is going to be negative 5. My C is not 14, but negative 14. Great. Once we've identified those, we're going to plug them into our formula. So I'm going to copy it down right here. X equals, or I guess we're dealing with m's now, so I'm going to erase the x's over here. It's m equals negative b plus or minus the square root, big square root, of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All over. By the way, notice I'm not putting my m over, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense because that's my equal sign. We don't divide our equal sign. So all over 2 times a. Okay, so watch how simple this is. I'm just going to plug it in. Oh my god, it's so easy. Just plug in. So in my next step, I'm writing m equals negative, because it says to write negative b. So now I'm going to go ahead and find my b term. B is negative 5. So I'm going to write negative 5. Why? Because it says the formula is negative of whatever b is. And if my b is already negative, then I've got to write that negative twice. Are you with me? Ask your partner if you're not sure what I just did. Let's copy down the rest. Plus or minus big square root. Okay, now I'm going to write b squared. So I'm focused right here, b squared. Well, my b is -5. You're going to use parentheses, guys. You've got to use your parentheses here. b in parentheses, and then square it, minus 4 times, okay, what's our a? Our a is 1, so I'll put it in parentheses. And now I just need to multiply by c. Well, c is -14 in parentheses. Look how beautiful this is looking. Okay, all over 2 times, so I'm focused here. I'm just going to plug in now my last a, which is 1. Awesome. Plugging in carefully is the first step. Next step, we're going to start simplifying. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus here first, fixing that. Negative times a negative will give me a +5, and then I'll work inside my square root, and I'll simplify these 3 pieces all at once. So next step, m equals, well, negative times -5 is +5, plus or minus, inside my square root. What's -5 squared? -5 times itself. That'll give me +25 minus. Okay, now watch this. I need to do 4. This is actually -4 times 1 times -14. So I want you to circle all of this, including the negative. See how we've got 2 negatives being multiplied in here? The -4 and the -14? That means our answer is going to be positive. So the first thing I want you to do is to look at your -4ac and write down whether that's going to turn positive or negative. So that's going to become a positive number because I have -4 times -14. And then I'm going to do my multiplication off to the side. 14 times 4 is 4 times 4 is 16. 1 times 4 is 4. Add the 1. That's 56. Awesome. So once again, guys, the number one mistake, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. The number one mistake is people messing up and thinking that this is a minus sign. So I'm letting you know. Circle the -4ac, and the first thing you'll do is determine if there's a negative times a negative, you're writing positive, because that'll be a positive number after all. Let's continue. It's all over 2 times a. Okay, 2 times 1 is just 2. Easy peasy. Great, you guys. We're going to keep going. Okay, we haven't done anything hard yet. I'm just multiplying things and adding them, trying not to make a silly mistake. Next, I'm going to simplify inside. So 25 plus 56 is the next thing I can work on. 5 plus 6 is 11. Okay, 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 5 is 8, 81. So next step is going to be m equals 5 plus or minus the square root of, that became 81 all over 2. Notice that I'm copying the all over 2 every step because I haven't done anything with it yet. Next step. Do you see something we can simplify? What's the square root of 81? You should recognize it immediately as 9, right? 9 times itself gives me 81, and I'm going to put it all over 2. So guys, at this stage, we've got to branch out because I have 2 potential answers. So if you've got some room, do like branch 1 and branch 2. Since I'm running out of room, see that? I'm going to do them off to the side, okay? So my first answer is going to be m equals, see how it says 5 plus or minus 9 over 2? Well, it means just that you're going to start with a plus, and your second answer is going to be with a minus. So watch me. I'm going to do 5 plus 9 all over 2, but my second answer is going to be 5 minus 9 all over 2. Well, these are 2 different answers. If I do 5 plus 9, I'm going to get 14 divided by 2, which is 7. That's my first answer. And if I'm doing 5 minus 9, I'll get -4 over 2, which is -2. These are my 2 answers here. So let's box our, at the very end, m equals 7 and m equals -2. Boom. It's pretty neat. So once we got down to this step right here, we had to branch out because now I've got to actually do 5 plus 9 or 5 minus 9. I've got 2 answers. Great. So you might be saying, but Miss Iname, what about our other methods? Do I have to use the quadratic formula? And to you, I would say, you don't have to use the quadratic formula ever. In fact, I would avoid using the quadratic formula. I would only use it as a last resort. Did you hear me? Write it up at the top of your notes. Write down last resort. Okay? It's kind of like an oatmeal cookie. Like no one really wants to eat the oatmeal cookie. It's our last resort. If there wasn't chocolate chip or snickerdoodle or peanut butter, I don't know the flavors of cookies, or blueberry cookie, I don't know. But it's a last resort. So let's see if we could have done this differently. Watch with me. Could we have, let's rewrite this as m squared minus 5m minus 14. So put your pencils down and just watch, unless you want to practice. Could we have done this a different way? Think, what method would you have used? That's right. I heard you say factor by grouping, magic X. You're so right. We could try that first. Why didn't we? Well, obviously because I was trying to teach you something, but let's see if it works. Okay, I need 2 numbers that will multiply to a times c, which is negative 14. I need to multiply to that. And I need to add up to my middle number, which is 5. Okay, I hope you caught the error. It's not 5, but negative 5 is my middle number. All right. So the 2 numbers that multiply to 14 add to negative 5. Well, what multiplies to 14? 1, 14, 2, 7. This isn't going to add up to 5, but this one might. Let's fix our signs, though. To multiply to negative 14, it could be like this. But negative 2 plus 7 adds to positive 5. That's not what I want. So then my other option is to make it 2 and negative 7. And we could split our middle term, but if you were in class earlier this week, you might be saying, but Miss Name, we can use our shortcut. Yes, we can use our shortcut only because the first term, our a, is equal to 1, right? If our leading coefficient is 1, we can use the shortcut. And the shortcut says, hey, just take these numbers and stick them in parentheses. It's so easy. So my first number is going to be x plus 2. I just drag that 2 into my parentheses. And then the other factor is going to be x minus 7, because I drag that negative 7 in here. Set it equal to 0. Oh my god, isn't that so simple? My first answer is going to be x plus 2 equals 0. I'll solve for x. X equals negative 2. And my second answer, if I set x minus 7 equal to 0 because of the 0, a product, a property, okay, it's going to be x equals positive 7. And hey, aren't those the same answers that we got over here? It's wild. Math is just absolutely wild. Math is out of control. It is so cool. So many ways to get the same answer. So here's what I'm going to tell you. If you can do factor by grouping or magic X, do it because it's a lot easier. If you can't, and you'll discover soon we can't do it for every problem, then as a last resort, we'll use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is the oatmeal cookie of quadratic equations, okay? We're not going to do it in our first preference, but we may have to if we really want to eat a cookie. So, let's go to our second example of the day. It says b squared minus 4b plus 4. So pause the video right now and go ahead and try doing it with magic X. Because if you can, we know that's easier. Go ahead, give it a shot. Pause and try it. I'm waiting for you. I'm not going to give you all the answers. Okay, here we go. I'm going to give you the stupid answers. Okay, here we go. I need two numbers that multiply to +4 and add up to -4. And if you tried it like a good student, then you would have found out that there are no numbers that work. Magic X will not save us today. So what do we have to use? Oatmeal cookie. Here we go. We're going to use the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula says you're going to plug in A, B, and C into this nifty little equation. So x equals -b plus or minus the square root. See if I want you to try and memorize this, by the way. You need to try and memorize this guy to lead to less errors. All over 2a. So let's identify our A, B, and C. A equals the number in front, which is 1. B equals my second coefficient, which is -4. And C equals my final coefficient, or my constant coefficient, which is 4. Let's plug it in, you guys. Okay, try doing it yourself. Remember to use parentheses, please, every time you plug in. And then check your answer against mine. So pause the video, give it a shot. So I'm going to write negative. I'm plugging in for B now. So it's going to be -4 plus or minus the big square root of B squared. So it's going to be -4 squared. Next comes my minus sign. Just copy it down. And then 4 times, what's A? A is 1. And then what's C? C is 4. And my square root has to cover all of that. And it's going to be all over 2 times A, which is 1. Did you use your parentheses like I used my parentheses? I hope so, because we don't want to get silly mistakes, and this will help us. So next step, we're going to do a couple things. Simplify this, square that guy, and then remember you need to circle the -4ac and immediately determine it's going to be positive or negative in the next step. So I've got x equals, what's -4? That's right, +4 plus or minus big square root. What's -4 squared? That's +16. Okay, now, I'm not going to write plus. I'm not going to write minus. I'm going to do some thinking first. Look what we've got. I have a -4 times positive times positive. Is my answer going to be a positive or a negative? It's going to be a negative. Write it down immediately. Okay, what's 4 times 1? That's 4. And then times 4, again, is 16. Boom. Don't make any errors here. It's all simple. Take it step by step. Work slowly and carefully so we can get this right. All over 2 times 1. Well, 2 times 1 is just 2. Cool. If you've made it this far, you're pretty much golden to finish the problem. There's not too much left to do. Next step, we're going to do 16 minus 16. So we've got to simplify inside the square root next. So I get x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 0. That's okay. That's okay. All over 2. And now we've got to think, okay, well, what's the square root of 0, you guys? The square root of 0 is just 0. So if I'm doing, think about this for a second, 4 plus 0 over 2, or 4 minus 0 over 2, aren't those the same thing? In my next step, I'm just going to write 4 over 2, because if I add 0 to 4, or take away 0 from 4, it doesn't matter. It's just 4. Okay, 4 divided by 2. And in my last step, how many times does 2 go into 4? Well, that simplifies to just 2. Hey, we only got one answer this time. Is that okay? Yeah, it's totally fine. We're allowed to get one answer. Also, I just realized I made a horrible mistake earlier. Okay, when I said that magic x wouldn't work, it actually totally does. That's my brain fart for not thinking straight. If I need two numbers that multiply to 4 and add to -4, those numbers would be -2 and -2. So using the shortcut, because the number in front is 1, so we can use the shortcut. Okay, I would just say, hey, that's x minus 2, baby. X minus 2 again. And so my answer would be x equals 2. And x equals 2 were just my single answer. And we can verify, hey, we got the right answer. But I hope you did follow along and you did do the quadratic formula, because this is important. I will ask you to do it on a test. All right, so just make sure you're getting practice with this. If you didn't write it down now. Coolio. So, last example. 2x squared minus 3x equals 7x. Okay, smart kids, what should our very first step be here? Good, we're going to move all the terms. Get all terms to the same side. Why? Because we want to set this bad boy equal to 0. So let's do it. How am I going to get everything to the same side? I got to get rid of this 7x. So I'm going to minus 7x here. I'm going to minus 7x here. Did I copy this question wrong? Let me see the test. Yes, I did. Okay, so that shouldn't be minus 3x. That should just be minus 3. There. Okay, that works better. So now I'm moving everything to the same side, so I get left with a 0 on the right side. And on the left, notice that 7x doesn't have any like terms. So we're just going to write them in order. 2x squared minus 7x minus 3 equals 0. Cool. Let's see if magic x works. Here, we need two numbers that multiply to -6 and add to -7. Go ahead and see if you can find some. Really try. Okay, try to do it without me. So maybe you said, hey, 1 and 6, Miss Name. But if I need to multiply to a negative number, then only one of these guys can be negative, right? And 1 minus 6 isn't going to give me -7. If we make them both negative so that they can add to -7, well, now they're multiplying to a positive 6. So this is a true example of something that can't be factored. Bye-bye. Okay, that's not going to help us this time. What do we need? Everyone, it's oatmeal cookie time. It's oatmeal cookie time. All right, so I need to use the quadratic formula. I'm going to rewrite it. X equals, see if you remember it, okay? Call it out for me. Negative b, good, plus or minus, good, big square root, b squared minus 4ac, all over, not just part over, but all over 2a. Great. So what shall we do? Let's identify our coefficients, friends. Boom, do it yourself. Actually, I want you to pause the video, work through as much of this as you can on your own, and then see if it matches with mine, all right? My a is 2. I said pause the video. Do it. Okay, so now that you're checking your work, because you paused the video, see if you got a equal to 2, b equal to -7, and c equal to -3. If you got that, we're golden. Let's move forward. X equals. So we're plugging in with our parentheses. First, I need -b. So I'm going to write negative. I'm plugging right here. I need -7. Then plus or minus big square root. Okay, now I'm plugging in here. B squared, which is going to be -7 in parentheses, all squared. Next, I need minus 4ac. Well, my a is 2, and my c is -3. All that goes under the square root, so I'm going to extend it. Boom. And that's all over 2 times a, and a is 2. Awesome sauce. Okay. Next step. Can you figure out what to do? Yeah, that guy in front, we need to change that to a positive 7. Whoops, what happened? Positive 7 plus or minus square root. Next, we need to change that negative 7 squared to a 49. And next, we're going to circle these. Okay, we're going to circle them because it's important. Okay, is this going to turn into a positive number or a negative number once we've multiplied it all out? You so smart. You said positive because I have a negative right here times a negative. So it's going to turn into a positive. So write plus immediately. Okay, now let's do the work. What's 4 times 2? Well, that's 8. Okay, now times that by 3. That's 24. Right? I did 4 times 2 times 3. I did this first. And that, now I get 24 here. And it's going to be all over what? It's going to be all over 4. Okay. I'm not sure if I made a mistake yet. Just pause and ask your partner. I think we're good to go. Okay. Good, yeah, I just checked it. I think we're good. Okay, let's keep going. So next, what's 49 plus 24? That's going to be 13. Carry the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. Plus 2 is 7. So I got 73. X equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 73 all over 4. Okay, we're just got to finish this up. Okay, give me a quick second. I need to pause this video. Hold on. Go ahead and finish the rest of the problem, you guys, if you can. Or I guess you don't know how. So, hold on. All right, well, it looks like we are good to go. So next step, we're going to need to simplify this. Well, if I do a waterfall, because that's what simplify means, I'm going to realize that actually I don't know anything that goes into 73. 2 doesn't go in, 3 doesn't go in, 5 doesn't go in, so I'm kind of stuck. Even 7 doesn't go in. Well, if that doesn't simplify, then our final answer, you guys, is going to be x equals 7 plus square root of 73 all over 4, and x equals 7, so I'm branching, minus square root of 73 all over 4. And that's perfectly fine. See how we would never have gotten these answers with a magic X? Yeah, this is a crazy problem, but that's actually pretty much the hardest that it gets. So, if you were able to do these 3 problems with me all the way, good job. Let's move on to our next part. Okay, so really quickly, this question asks, determine what type of solutions each equation would have. 2 real, 1 real, or 2 imaginary. Justify your answer. So, I know that this looks weird, example 1C, but this is actually 2, let's label this. This is 2 real solutions, right? We had a plus version, we had a minus version, and there's no i's involved. So they're both real solutions. Let's look up further. For example, 1B, this time we had only, let's label this, 1 real solution, right? Because we got plus or minus 0, that just gave us the 1 answer. And let's look at 1A. Here we had what? Again, 2 real solutions for 1A. So I want you to look at 1A and to look at 1B. See if you can tell me which step in A and B, you knew that there was going to be two solutions or one solution. What was the step? So look down at your work. At which step did we know, hey, this is just going to be one answer? Pause the video. Give your idea to your partner. They might be ahead of you or behind you. It's okay. Just tell them what step you think. Let's label it. This is step 1. This is step 2. This is step 3. This is step 4. All right. So if you said step 3, Miss Name, I knew it's step 3. Then I would say, yes, we know it's step 3. Actually, some of you might have said even at step 2. Why did I know at step 2 that I was going to have only one solution and not two answers? Well, because look, under our square root, didn't we do the square root of 6? Doesn't 16 minus 16 immediately tell us we're going to have the square root of 0? Yes? Well, when we add 0 to a number or minus 0 from a number, let's say the number is, in this case it was 4, but if it was 8 plus 0, 8 minus 0, we're going to get the same answer whether we're adding or subtracting 0. So that's how I knew it was going to be one solution only, because the guy under the square root, by the way, is the b squared minus 4 times a times c part. If that equaled 0, then I'm going to be adding and subtracting nothing. So if that equaled 0, I got one real solution. Whereas look up here. In step 3, we didn't get plus or minus the square root of 0. We got plus or minus the square root of 81, which is a positive number, right? 81 is a positive number. So when I take the square root of 81, I'm going to be basically adding 9 to something and subtracting 9 from something. So I'm going to get two different answers. In this case, we did 5 plus 9 all divided by 2, and then 5 minus 9 all divided by 2. We get two different answers. So it all depends on what we call this piece right here. I'm going to highlight it in blue. It all depends on that piece right there. That piece has a special name. I want you to write it in your notes. It's called, write down, to determine number of solutions. We'll use the discriminant. That's the special name for b squared minus 4ac. Now watch this. This is in your notes at the top. If it equals 0, if the guy under the square root is 0, we're going to have one real solution. If the guy under the square root, the discriminant, is a positive number, or basically is greater than 0, that's what I'll write. All right, if it's greater than 0, which means it's positive, then we're going to have two real solutions. Now, what if the guy under the square root, what if we got something like this? 3 plus or minus the square root of 8 minus 17 all over 2a. So now the guy under the square root is a negative number. Well, what happens then? My next step, this would say 3 plus or minus 3i all over 2. So if I have a negative number under my square root, we're going to have 3 plus 3i and 3 minus 3i over 2. Hey, that's two solutions, but they're not real. They're imaginary. So if my b squared minus 4ac, like this guy right here under the square root, if it's less than 0, basically if it's negative, we're going to have two imaginary solutions. So please, please, please write this down. Super duper important. It's called the discriminant. It's the b squared minus 4ac. That right there is called our discriminant. If it's equal to 0, we get one real solution. If we end up with a positive number under our square root, we get two solutions. And if we end up with a negative number, we're going to get two imaginary solutions. So let's look at example 2 now. It says determine what type of solutions. Oh my God, we just learned that. So write down discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac. And we've got three options. If it equals 0, if it's greater than 0, and if it's less than 0. Greater than 0 means I'm positive. Less than 0 means I'm negative. So we've got three options. Let's see. Okay, cover your notes up top. Can you remember? If it equals 0, do we have one solution or two? We got one. And it's real, by the way. Okay, if the guy under the square root is positive, do we have one or two answers? We're going to have two. They're going to be real. Okay, now if the guy under our square root is negative, remember, we're taking square root of a negative number, then we have two imaginary. Awesome. So let's do these problems. To do this, I need to actually do b squared minus 4ac. Notice they're not saying solve. I don't have to use the whole quadratic form. It just says determine what type of solutions. So I'm going to use a discriminant. Well, b is equal to 11. Actually, I'll go in order. Okay, a is equal to 6. b is equal to 11. And c is equal to negative 2. So b squared means I'm going to do 11 squared minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c, which is negative 2. Let's see if that's a positive or negative or 0. 11 squared, that's 121. Now, a negative, so as always, we're going to circle this, including the minus sign. Is that going to be a positive or negative? Boom, that's going to be a positive because I have a negative times a negative. 4 times 6 is 24, and then times 2 is 48. Do we really have to go much further than this? No. We know at this point that this is a positive number, right? Whatever it is. It's actually 169. Well, that's going to be a since that's a positive number, it's greater than 0, then I know I'm going to have two real solutions. Because again, think about it. Wouldn't this be like negative b plus or minus the square root of all that? All over 2 times a. So that's basically negative 11 plus square root of 169 is 13. And negative 11 minus 13 over 12. So I'm going to get two different answers because this was a positive number. Boom, two real solutions. Okay, let's move on. Let's do B. So let's identify our A, our B, and our C. Do it yourself, and then check with me when you're done. Pause the video. So B squared minus 4 times A times C will give me 36. Okay, is this positive or negative? That is a negative, so minus. And 4 times 1 is 4, times 9 is 36. And 36 minus 36 is 0. Okay, if the discriminant is 0, we know we're only going to have one answer, one real solution. Let's keep going. Okay, here we actually have some work to do first. We can't say that my A is 5 and my B is whatever. We have to get everything to the same side first. Okay? Move all terms, because we got to set it equal to 0. So we're going to minus the 28. I'll get 5c squared minus 28 equals 0. Now let's identify our A, B, and C. So remember, A, B, and C look like this. The guy in front of the x squared, or in this case our c squared, that's our 5. So A equals 5. It's our leading coefficient. Our B is the guy in front of our x, or in this case, in front of just c. Well, there is no c term. That means that we actually have a 0c. In fact, if I wanted to, I could rewrite this. So it looks like 5c squared plus 0c minus 28. Do you see how I'm missing that middle term? So that's just going to be a 0 then. So let's write A equals 5, B b equals 0. And then c, which is the number at the end with no variable attached, is just negative 28. So let's see what happens with our discriminant. B squared minus 4 times a times c. Well, 0 squared is nothing. And then this is going to become a positive or negative. You tell me. Good. It's going to become positive because I have a negative times a negative. So that's positive. And this is 20 times 28. Actually, I don't even care what that is because I already know it's a positive number. And all they want from me is to tell them if there's one solution or two solutions. Since it's a positive number, I know I'm going to have two solutions, and I know they're going to be real. Ta-da! Okay, you guys, off with you. Go do your homework. Your homework is going to be on page, let me see. Your homework is on page 37. You're going to do number 1. You can choose 3 parts from number 1. You're going to do number 2. You will choose 4 to do. And then everyone's doing number 3. Okay? Now, if you decide not to skip any, like you do all parts of all problems, then you'll get extra credit. There it is. Go have fun with your quadratic formula, and even if you can do magic X, I want you to use the quadratic formula. Okay, just for today, because that's what we're practicing. In the future, you can use whatever method you want, but for today, you'll use the quadratic formula for all problems, okay? Take a second, look at your neighbor if they're working ahead, and make sure that they know that I expect to see the quadratic formula for every problem. Because if they're like, oh, okay, I got this, I'm moving ahead, and they didn't watch the video, then they're not going to know that I need to see that. So help each other out. You guys are awesome and amazing. I'm so proud of you. This is Miss Name. Peace out. Home Scout, as the kids say. That would be a colloquialism, right? Peace out, home dog. Actually, let's look it up and see if I'm spelling it right. Remember you guys learned that word the other day? Yeah, there we go. Okay, something is colloquial if it's used in ordinary or familiar conversation. What did I tell you guys? I am a dictionary. Okay, colloquialism is a word or phrase. So let's see what examples of colloquialisms. Bamboozle? Okay, definitely wanna. Go bananas, go nuts. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. Hey, you guys. Let's use some colloquialisms. Y'all are the bomb. Go nuts on this homework. Ha! Go have fun. Bye.